Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And today we are so thrilled to be joined by the team behind the movie Burn It All. We have Brady Hall, who's the writer and director, and Elizabeth Cotter, who plays the lead role of Alex in it. And Brady, the first thing that I wanted to ask you about was actually the construction of the story and the script, because you're telling a story that's an incredibly personal journey for this central female protagonist. And at the same time, you're also telling a much larger story about misogyny and the treatment of women in society. And then you're also dipping into the illegal organ trade on top of that as well. So in telling those really large stories, how did you make sure in the writing of the script that it was always centered around a character's emotional journey throughout?
You kind of hit the goal I had doing this. I wanted to have, on one hand, kind of an action, entertainment kind of thing, and on the other hand, I wanted to have a message. And so it was really just a question of making sure that the message half rang as true as possible. And I know, since I'm a guy, I don't know what it's like to be a woman. So the first draft was just me just spitballing everything out, and then I gave it to a bunch of women I know and said, like, what do you think? Does this read correct? And I got a lot of feedback on that, and a lot of things were changed. And so I think it's really important when you're writing a story about somebody who is not like you to make sure you're doing it in good faith, and to make sure you've asked people who are in that demographic to kind of cross check it as best they can. And so that was really important, just to make sure that what was in there rang true, or as true as possible, because obviously you have to fantasize some stuff for a fiction movie. That's just what you have to do. But I really tried to make sure that the things the guys were saying were things that women actually have said to them, and all that stuff. So it was really important to me to do that.
When you first were sharing the script with people, were you anticipating them purely just coming back and giving you notes on the female voice, or did you specifically say that you also wanted notes on the things that the men say to her as well?
Yeah, no, the male dialogue in the movie was really important to get right, because like, for instance, we're already seeing a few reviews from people who are like, oh, this is totally fantastical and this is just not real, and he totally played it up to try to get like brownie points. I'm like, no, this is actually stuff that men say to women all the time, and you might not hear it, dude reviewer, because you're not around, and I don't hear it because I'm not around, but like the women hear that because there's nobody else around when they hear that. So yeah, it was very important to get that dialogue as close to real as possible.
Yeah. And then Elizabeth, with your performance, there's such a duality in the fact that your character has to become incredibly strong and hold a lot of fortitude within herself. But at the same time, there's a real sense of vulnerability with what she's experienced and with the loss of her mom and all of that brings up. So how did you think about the balance of those two aspects within her as a character?
In all honesty, Alex's duality is easy to balance, surprisingly, because I understood both sides so well. I've said this in previous interviews, but I feel like Brady wrote me. Like, Alex and I are so similar. So it was easy in the sense that, like, as a personal, like, as a human, I've gone through some of these things. So I looked at both sides and I kind of just melded them together as I would in my ordinary life. And then added some fantastical character traits to kind of make Alex a little more like badass. You know what I mean? So, she is a very sensitive human. She's a very tough human. She is going through a lot, but at the same time, she has this innate way of just getting things done when she has to get things done regardless. So that balance just came pretty naturally, because we're the same person.
Yeah. And right at the beginning, she gets that phone call that her mother is passing away. And then, we never have any scenes with the two of them together. What was your journey of constructing the relationship between the two of them? Because it's not just the grief of losing her mom, it's actually the grief of the relationship that was so incredibly damaged that they hadn't spoken in years.
I called my mom a lot to do that, because Nancy, who essentially plays my mom, or plays Alex's mom, she was on set with us. She was helping us out. She's part of the crew. So I did speak to her. We were really cool. Like, we were definitely playing off of each other off camera. But I wanted a real connection with that moment and with the story in general. So I was calling my mom often. I was texting her every time we were between takes, between scenes. And I asked her questions. Like, I really had to go deep for that aspect of things, where I envisioned, like, okay, what could this feel like? What would this feel like? And while my mom and I, in reality, don't have some of those same dynamics as Alex and her mom, just putting myself in that mindset and asking my mom those questions and just being like, hey, like, what would I do in this scenario, just really helped build that up and make it that much deeper. Yeah.
And then there's also added layers through all of the peripheral characters that come into her world that are part of her backstory and her life from growing up there. And so I wanted to ask both of you about that, Brady, in terms of how you decided which characters to bring into her world that would be really useful in moving the narrative forward and telling us a lot of details and making sure that they were always serving that purpose. And for you, Elizabeth, like how that actually really helped you to construct a much richer version of who this character was for yourself.
Or do you want to go first?
Oh, sure.
Cool.
I mean, I definitely wanted to have a lot of people in the story that she knew from back when she lived there, because she's been gone, I think, 6 years, if I remember correctly. And so I always wanted to have like her ex-boyfriend be like a local cop. Just that felt like a good kind of way to weave everything together, and tie and that character of the ex-boyfriend is kind of like the whole reason that she left in the first place, because he was abusive to Alex. He was abusive to Alex's sister. Alex's mom didn't believe it, and that caused a big rift. So she's just like, screw it, I'm out. And then another big thing in the first draft was that there was it was a sausage party. There was way too many guys, and there still are a lot of guys in the movie, but we needed a little bit of female energy to come through. So that's when the Donna character came in. I really needed somebody to kind of be a good person in the middle of the story, because there's just so many bad people coming at Alex right from the get-go. So Alex didn't know Donna before, but Donna has lived in that town while Alex has not. So it's kind of a connection back to the town, and then Alex's sister and all that stuff. So it really felt important to have her hometown trigger things in her brain and have memories, so that she could have something to kind of sound off of as the story progresses.
And how about for you, Elizabeth? How did the addition of all of those characters and all of those details really help you in building Alex's backstory?
I mean, truly, each character is so interesting. Like, each character is such a major play and like a major piece of Alex. So going through the script, I took notes, and I had these mental notes when I got to set. And I was like, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. How does each character kind of imprint themselves on Alex, and how does each character bring something or a new lesson or a new strategy or something to Alex? So as I'm going through the script and as I'm going through these scenes, I'm just thinking, okay, I'm actually learning things as Liz, and then just imprinting that onto Alex. So taking those moments and be like, okay, so I just met Travis. Okay, now what's the rest of my story going to look like? And when you read a script, it's one thing. When you're in the moment and you're in front of a camera, it's a completely different ballgame. And the funny thing is, I had envisioned this moment with Travis for such a long time. When we finally got in front of the camera, I was like, oh, wow. And that was the natural aspect of things. That's where all these things started to click. And those characters kind of like really imploded to that scene. And it's just allowing those characters to like teach you lessons as you're reading your script, and then playing that through your camera work. Yeah.
And this wasn't the first time that the two of you had worked together, but it was the first time that you were making a narrative feature. And for you, Elizabeth, this was your first time playing a lead. How did the shorthand that you already had in existence from understanding how you both worked as artists and storytellers really impact the way that you prepped and found a lot of the emotional beats of scenes together?
Ready?
I mean, the first thing we did together wasn't really terribly substantial. It was a music video for a band I was in, and it was about a woman who just got street harassed and then like finally snaps and just goes back through her path on the day and just beats the hell out of every dude who catcalled her. And Elizabeth was not the lead in that. It was actually a mutual friend of ours, Carlina Gore, who's another stunt performer. And I was like, I need another lady to come in and like tag team on a couple guys for one scene. And so Elizabeth came in and did that. So it wasn't a big experience with working with her, but I just remembered her. And so we didn't really do a lot of that, I guess, building. The building blocks were not there on that thing, other than like feeling bad that her bag got stolen during that shoot.
That was
Yeah, some random person on the street stole her bag while out of the gear pile when nobody was looking.
so cool.
So yeah, we kind of had to start fresh on Burn It All, just on building that language and that rapport and all that stuff.
What were the most useful tools for you, Elizabeth, that Brady really gave you in finding a lot of the different beats and a lot of the undertones beyond the script and scenes?
So Brady did me a huge favor, and he allowed me to kind of do this 3 flavors of ice cream deal. So we had vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. And so I would give him 3 different versions of a scene, of a line, etc. And trusted him, because this is what Brady does, and just trusted that he would pick the take that best suited that situation, and it worked. That was the tool, was being able to say, okay, I don't have to stick to one choice. I have these 3 solid choices that I like. And he was really helpful in the development of Alex, because there were certain things that I could not figure out. When you're given a script like that, even though she's so close to my heart, and even though we're very, very similar, there were certain things I was just like, you know what? I don't know. And he was very good about having me address those questions. And I was able to see the way things were being played out. Like there was definitely a lot of like, okay, this is the way that this scene is going to look. This is where the camera's going to be for this. It was a very hands-on experience. And I don't think a lot of actors or sub performers get to see that part. So usually just like, go do your job. Here's your thing. Okay, cool, bye. With Brady, he was very like, this is how it's going to go. This is the feel I'm looking for. So there was a lot of communication. And I think that's like, it's probably the coolest thing about the project, was just that we were in good communication. Yeah.
And Brady, you made the specific choice to also operate the camera throughout making this film as well, and used a lot of handheld techniques to really get a lot of intimacy with the choices that you made visually as well. What was the point when you realized that you wanted to be the person operating the camera? Because you haven't necessarily done that on every project, but for this one, you really felt like it was a necessity.
It was more of just a choice born out of efficiency and keeping the crew as lean and mean as possible, and just cutting down the time that it takes to, because when you're a director and you have a cinematographer, you have an idea in your head, and then you have to communicate it to the cinematographer and make sure that you're simpatico and that everybody's on the right page. And it can take time. Sometimes it's real quick, and sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes the cinematographer has a great idea and you're like, yep, do, ship it. And other times it takes a little time, and then they have different lighting ideas and you have different lighting ideas, and it just bogs things down sometimes. And it's an extra car, and it's just all this extra time and hassle. So I was like, you know what, we're going to make this really quick, really lean, really mean. I know how to work the camera. I've got the equipment. I got the lenses. I do this for a living. I've made movies where I'm the cameraman before. So I'm just like, we'll just do it. And my shoulder hates me to this day for that, because those lenses were so heavy. But yeah, it was just a kind of an efficiency thing. It just made things move a lot faster, because I just only had to have an inner dialogue with myself to figure out what the next shot was. I didn't have to communicate that to a team.
Elizabeth, did you find that the use of handheld actually helped you in a different way to just focus on the emotional beats of a scene? Because it wasn't necessarily, okay, and by the time I deliver this line, I've got to be standing here. It was just really being able to move the way that you felt your character would in that moment.
It was amazing. Honestly, I think it was one of the best choices that Brady made. I just didn't feel bombarded. You know, don't get me wrong, I love every job I've been on. Been so happy with the way the camera work was, but there was like a wall that was gone all of a sudden. Not the fourth wall, but there was just something that left that felt so good, where I knew it was Brady, and I knew that we also had an awesome second cameraman, and they were both just awesome because they were so close to me. And when you're in that intimate moment with your camera crew, and in this case also your director, there's a certain trust that's just instantly there. So I knew if I moved somewhere, especially during like a fight scene, I didn't worry for a second that Brady wasn't going to know where to go. Even if we hadn't communicated, it was like a natural, just like telepathic communication. Like, I'm going here, Brady knows where to go. And like I said, that's not standard on the set. You know, usually it's just like a whole reset. The fight choreographer has to get super involved. And even though Peter Drago, who was our stunt coordinator, was there, that trust was just major because the way the camera work was done. It was awesome.
Yeah, and that speaks to the leanness of the crew again, because Drago is my neighbor. I've known him for years, and it's just everybody knew each other, and it was such a small crew and there was no big dollies in the way and all that gear that kind of is, I'm sure, would be visually distracting to Elizabeth. You just ask Christian Bale how distracting gear is, and he'll tell you. Terminator joke right there. Sorry, Christian. But yeah, it's just all that distraction was gone. It's just this one goober with the camera on his shoulder, just like, okay, just like right there in the corner, just following everything, and it just made it a lot easier and quicker.
Yeah. And one scene I wanted to ask you about, Brady, was the fight scene that's in the bar kind of after hours, where it's just the characters there. It's not like the bar is open, because I think the use of space that you encompass within that scene is really admirable. You really use every single corner. Suddenly they're over on the booth and you're using the pool table, and you're using a lot of the items within that space as well. So I just wanted to ask you about choreographing and really thinking about the movement of the characters, but also the movement of the camera in terms of choreography as well.
I mean, that space was... that location came before the script was even written. That is an old Denny's that has been kind of vacant for about 10 or 15 years. It was a Denny's and it was a pizza parlor, and now it's just been sitting gathering dust, literally gathering dust and mold. So and it's actually Deb, one of the producers, her mom owns that building and just hasn't done anything with it. And so I'm like, can we use that Denny's? And she's like, yeah, do whatever you want, smash the hell out of it. So the front is the restaurant fight scene. The back room, all the bowels of the building, is the body farm with all the plastic on the walls. That's why the plastic's there. That is a deliberate choice to hide the fact that that is the back of a Denny's. So yeah, we had free reign to do whatever we wanted. So I went out there a few times and like, okay, we can do a pool table thing. We can do this, we can do that. And so the scene was built around the location. And then once the rubber hit the road, we just like, okay, we're going to change all the bulbs to blue and red. I got all these can lights just put up on the ceiling, just blue and red everywhere. And that made it easy to just run and gun like we've been talking about. We didn't have to set up lights for every shot because all the lights were already in place. So that scene was two different units basically going on either end of the building. It was Regan with Becky, the stunt double, in the wig and the hoodie, and it was me with Alex. And it was just kind of a free for all. I mean, obviously there was coordination. We planned every shot out, but it was just two different teams all day long, just shooting different fights on either end of the room. And we planned out like we got a pack of the breakaway bottles and we got some other props that we could use to be weapons. But for the most part, it was just, this seems cool, let's do it. This seems cool, let's do it. Just kind of just clicking it off and just getting enough shots so we could cobble together a cool fight scene.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, one of the really great things about the journey that you had with the stunt team in building out scenes like that, where there's multiple different fight partners for Alex, sounds like they really were conscious of how every actor and every stunt performer approaches scenes and fights in a completely different way. So how did they really help you and support you in finding the different stylistic beats of all of the different nuanced moments within that larger scene?
I can't say this enough. The trust was so real here because they trusted me as a first of all stunt person, then actor. I was really lucky that most of the men I fought I knew, so I had a huge advantage. So Peter trusted me, I know Brady trusted me, but we got to know each other all over again, and I know how they move. Rob Bradstreet, I can't say this enough, I did not know that I was going to get to fight him, and I was actually staying at his house during this film. And he shows up on set and I was like, no. And I've looked up to Rob since I can remember. So I knew that his stage combat experience was very serious and very real. So I already knew how he moved and he helped me a lot. And then everybody else that I fought with, I just, again, got to know them even better on set. And we went through it as like individual units, just like dancers would. We just sat there and we're like, okay, this is how you move. This is how I move. We had an actor that we taught how to choke. We were doing things like that. And as a team with all that trust, it just came so naturally. Like, I can't say it enough. It was so easy to be able to do that. It was super cool.
Yeah. And for both of you, with a lot of the stunt and fight sequences throughout the movie, you really always have to make sure that they're still, pushing the narrative forward, telling us more about who Alex is, telling us more about this journey that she's going on. So for both of you, how did you make sure that every single fight sequence in the movie had a different personality and feel to it and told us different things about this journey for Alex?
Well, the really important thing with every encounter Alex has, physical or verbal, is that she's not doing this because she wants to get back at anybody. This isn't a revenge film. I know some places have called it a revenge thriller, but there's no revenge involved. It's 100% self-preservation and protecting her family. So anybody she fights, anybody she shoots, anybody she kills, she does not want to, and she gives them a chance to not be killed or get into a fight with her. And so it was really important to make at least the spark of every fight something that she doesn't want to do. She's reluctant to fight. She's like, okay, I don't want to shoot you. Please don't make me shoot you. And then they do something that makes her shoot them. So that reluctance was really important to convey because it's not revenge. It's all self-defense. Everything she does is in complete 100% self-defense.
Was that the same for you, Elizabeth? Because obviously, it's not things that she wants to do, but she kind of develops a little bit more of an internal strength and necessity of survival instinct throughout the film.
And that's a whole different fight. It's a whole different style of fighting. And we were lucky in the sense that the genre of fights that we were using, there was no limitation. It wasn't just Western. It wasn't just I had just come from China. So my fight style was so different coming this way. But we didn't have to worry about that. Everything was like nice and blended, which I love watching films where it's like, oh, this is super Western. Oh, that's definitely something I've seen in a Kung Fu movie. I like that because it means that the character is dynamic. It means that the character has had life experience. It gives grit to a character. And with Alex, like Brady said, she doesn't want to do this. She has no desire to hurt anyone. If she had it her way, she would just walk in and be like, listen, I want my mom. Just want to bury her if that's cool with you guys. But I guess I'm gonna have to fight you. So I'm gonna use whatever training I had from the military and we'll kind of figure this out together. So when I was in that moment, I thought about the hesitation. I was like, okay, you're Alex right now. And I kept thinking, like, this isn't something I want to do right now. I really don't want to do this. And you can kind of see it. There's moments where like my face, Alex's face, our face, I take deep breaths because I'm thinking to myself, Alex, you got this, but let's not do this. You know what I mean? So I added those moments in a way to connect to the audience and say, like, these are choices she's making, but she's really trying to do the right thing, because I didn't want it to come across as revenge. I didn't want it to just be like a bloody mess of like, ha ha ha, I did this. I wanted it to be a peaceful moment of like, I'm protecting my sister. I'm protecting my now dead mother. I'm protecting myself and whatever future we may or may not have after this. So I hope that was very present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the other spectrum of styles of scenes, you know, there are a lot of moments where they're a little bit more intimate and quiet and emotional with everything that she's processing. And Brady, I thought it was really interesting that you made a choice, you know, for scenes like the moment where she's getting the phone call about her mom, that you actually almost treated it like a physically intimate scene and kept it to necessary personnel on the set and kind of gave Elizabeth time to just step away and have space by herself before filming. Is that something that you've done for other actors on different projects before? Or was it something that you really just kind of understood specifically to this character and discovered in the journey of making this film?
I mean, it's been an evolution. Like, I mean, back in the day when me and my dumb friends were just, and I was dumb too, all of us dumb guys were just running around making stupid movies. We had no concept of that. So we didn't know what a closed set was. We didn't know what giving people space. And I always remember on one of my earlier films, there was a scene where a guy, again, was suicidal. And there was like 5 or 6 people in the room, and everybody was just kind of joking around and was like BSing. And he's like, "Will you all?" And the actor was just like blew up. He's like, "Can you all just please shut up? Stop joking. I need to get." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? He probably needs to get into this zone of being suicidal, and we're all here BSing around, being idiots." So that was a kind of a turning point in that, and that kind of made me realize that like it's not just sex scenes that need a closed set. It's these really emotionally intimate scenes. And so for that opening scene when she's on hold on the suicide hotline, which is a real thing, like I called a suicide hotline once for a friend because they were kind of in distress and I wanted to get some advice, and I had to wait for 45 minutes to get somebody on the line. So so that's a real thing. But yeah, it was just me and Deb and Neb, Nancy in the room. That was it. And we were just we treated it like a sex scene. It's like critical personnel only, give them the space to really get into that zone. And Deb was a big help on that. She was kind of guiding Liz emotionally through some of those things and like giving her some exercises to get into that zone.
Yeah. And then what was the difference that created for you, Elizabeth, in terms of the space that allowed you and the emotional spaces that you could enter into with Alex before the cameras were even rolling?
It was such a delightful experience, despite the fact of, you know, this is a suicide scene. And I felt very safe. And I was so glad to hear and see that A, these are people that I trust. Like I can't, like I said, I've said this a million times, but like B, it gave me a second to really sit in it. And I remember Deb, she was asking me questions, you know, really serious, hard-hitting questions. And I sat in a room, like right down the hallway from set. And I kind of just like allowed myself to cry a little bit and like really feel this moment for Alex. And it was almost like a breathing like point. Like I was like, okay, Alex is gonna die. Let's put ourselves in that moment. Because I knew if I walked in on the set like that, then I would truly be able to feel this. And the fact that it was so intimate, the fact that, you know, I had Brady literally over my head and I have Deb and Neb sitting there just kind of like helping me stay in it. It was beautiful. Like it was probably one of the saddest but most enjoyable experiences I've had on the set. Yeah.
And for both of you in the journey of making this film, what's the biggest thing that you feel that you had the opportunity to come away having learned or developed in terms of your skill sets as storytellers? Maybe starting with you, Brady.
I mean, this was definitely the first movie I've done, the first thing I've written really that had a real kind of commentary, like a real message. I've made, you know, comedy movies before and those don't really have any message. I've made a horror movie and I've made a couple of like dramas, but the dramas didn't really have, they weren't saying anything, which is a self-criticism, sure, but like objectively, they really don't have any like big theme to them. So this time I really wanted to make sure I had a theme, and that I researched it as best I could, and dotted the I's and crossed the T's and all that stuff. So that was the biggest growth I've made, is just like, oh yeah, you know what, I probably should use whatever influence I have, which is not a lot, but just to at least say something, anything, in addition to trying to entertain, because what else do we have to do? And I really should be taking advantage, or not taking advantage, I really should be giving back some of the privilege I have just as a white dude in the US. So that was the biggest thing, is just kind of recognizing that and putting that to work.
And what about for you, Elizabeth?
So many things. It's to be able to come away from this with more skills than I had. My fighting skills, I would like to think out better. My acting chops, definitely, I had to level up big time for this. But more so, being able to do a project of this caliber in such a short period of time, it just taught me to always be in it. Like it gave me this new mindset, this new frame of mind going on to any project, that really you have to wear multiple hats and you have to be able to just switch things up as quickly as possible. So now I'm coming away with this with a new perspective on the way that my job works, on the way that stunt performers and actors work together, on the way that directors have to be very close and intimate with their actors. Like the list goes on and on, but truly I feel like every skill I have was like sharpened quite a bit.
That's so wonderful to hear. Well, thank you so much to both of you for taking time to talk all about the movie today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.